Dr. Morales shook his head, folding the stethoscope into a worn leather bag. His face said more than any words could. Emiliana was lying on our old bed, the one we'd bought 25 years ago when we'd moved into this house after we'd gotten married. It had seemed like luxury then, solid, real wood, with carved headboards. Now it's turned into a hospital bed piled with pillows and medications. "The heart is quite weak, Signora Valeria," the doctor said quietly as he zipped up the bag. "Do what you can, but prepare for the worst. Maybe a day, maybe a week, but no more." The words struck like lightning. Though I'd expected them, hearing them out loud was unbearable. Dr. Morales had known our family for over 20 years, delivering my babies, treating my children for childhood illnesses, administering vaccinations. If he was saying these things, then there really was no hope. I walked him to the door, trying to stay upright. My legs were shaking, but I couldn't allow myself to be weak. Not now. In the hallway, Severiano, my youngest, was waiting for us. He was sitting in an old chair by the window, nervously rubbing his hat in his hands. The chair was the memory of my father-in-law, Don Manuel, who liked to sit there in the evenings and watch the sunsets. Now his grandson was sitting on it, waiting for something sad. When the doctor left, my son came over to me and put his arm around my shoulders. Severiano had always been taller than me, but now I felt how strong, how manly he had become. When he was born, he was such a fragile baby that I was afraid to even pick him up. And now he was the one who supported me. "Mom, I brought some new pills from the city, the ones the doctor prescribed last week, and some vitamins to strengthen my heart." Severiano was always thoughtful. Even as a child, he was the first to notice if one of us was sick, bring water, cover us with a blanket. When he was 7 years old and Osvaldo was 9, I came down with pneumonia. Osvaldo at such times usually ran away to play in the yard, saying that sick people scare him. And Severiano would sit next to my bed, read me children's books, and bring me tea with honey. At the time, it seemed just a childish peculiarity. Now I realized that nothing had changed. "Thank you, my son," I whispered. "You're so kind." "It's Dad, Mom, of course it is. Yes, it's his daddy, but why didn't Osvaldo understand that?" We went back to the bedroom. Emiliano was asleep, but his breathing was ragged, intermittent. His face was gray, his lips a little bluish. I sat down in the chair next to the bed, the same chair I'd spent 2 weeks in already. Its back was sore from sitting so long, but I didn't want to get up. What if my husband woke up and looked for me with his eyes? The room was filled with the smell of medicine and sickness. It used to smell like his cologne, my perfume, the fresh sheets I changed twice a week. Now it's all changed. On the nightstand next to the bed were bottles of pills, jars of mixtures, and glasses of half-drunk water. Next to it was a tonometer, which Severiano had bought at the city pharmacy, and a thermometer in a case. Severiano sat in an old armchair by the window and picked up a newspaper. But he didn't read it, just held it in his hands. I could see that he was worried too, but he tried not to show it. The men in our family had always thought that tears were a woman's business. Emiliano never cried in front of me either, not even when his father died. He just became more silent and worked more in the fields. "Mom, why don't we call Osvaldo?" Severiano asked quietly. "Let him come, if Dad is so bad." "He's working in the fields," I answered, even though I knew it wasn't quite true. Osvaldo was in the fields, but he could come if he wanted to. It was no more than an hour's truck ride from our house to the farthest fields. But it was the middle of the day, and he probably thought he'd still have time to visit his father in the evening. "Call him anyway," Severiano insisted. "Tell him the doctor was in, that things weren't going well." I picked up the old phone that was on the dresser and dialed Osvaldo's number. The phone buzzed for a long time, then his voice came out, but somewhat irritated. "Hello, Mom? What's wrong?" "Son, please come here." The doctor was there. "He says that Daddy has very little time left." He stopped talking, then sighed. "Okay, Mom, I'll be there tonight. I just have an emergency, the truck broke down, and I have to find a mechanic." "Osvaldo, it's your father who's dying." "I understand, Mom. I'll be there for sure." He hung up and I held the phone for a while. "It's urgent." What could be more urgent than a dying father? Emiliano woke up in the evening. His face was gray, his lips a little bluish, but his eyes were still alive, real. The same eyes I fell in love with 30 years ago at the village fair. He was a handsome young man in a white shirt then, and I was a shy girl in my best dress. He asked me to dance, and I said yes, though my mother always said it was forbidden to dance with strange men. Valerie, he whispered, his voice barely audible. Give me some water. I helped him up, putting another pillow under his back. His hands shook as he drank, and some water spilled onto his shirt. The white shirt I'd bought him for his last birthday. He'd said then that it was too dressy for working in the fields, but I'd insisted he wear something nice once in a while. Where's Osvaldo? He asked, looking around the room. Working in the far fields, I answered. But I called him, he'll be here. And Severiano? Here, Dad, the younger son answered, coming to the bed. How are you feeling? Bad, son. Very bad. But it's good to have you with me. Emiliano reached out to him, and Severiano gently took his father's hand in his own. The son's hands were already rough, working hands, like all the men in our family. But he touched his father very gently as if he were a child. Tell me about the fields, Emiliano asked. How is the corn? Is it ripe? It's ripening well, Papa. In 2 weeks we can harvest it. It'll be a good harvest if it doesn't rain. How are the workers? Aren't they lazy? They're working well. Don Rufino is watching everyone. Don Rufino has been our foreman for 15 years. An honest, experienced man whom Emiliano trusted completely. When we hired him, many people said he was too strict, that the workers wouldn't listen to him. But it turned out to be the opposite. People respected him for being fair and demanding. Emiliano nodded and closed his eyes. We sat in silence, me holding his hand, Severiano reading a newspaper in a chair by the window. Several hours passed in this way. Occasionally, my husband would wake up, ask for a drink or to shift his pillow, and then fall asleep again. I memorized every wrinkle on his face, every mole on his hands. It's strange how little we notice our loved ones in ordinary life, and how closely we begin to look at them when we realize we're about to lose them. He had a small mole on his forehead that I had hardly noticed before, and on his right arm was a scar from an old injury when he had cut himself with a scythe about 10 years ago. I was so scared when I saw the blood, I almost fainted. And he laughed, saying it was nothing, that it happened to men. Now that scar seemed especially dear to me, a part of his history, a part of our life. By 10 p.m., Osvaldo arrived. I heard the sound of his pickup truck in the yard and looked out the window. He walked toward the house slowly, reluctantly, as if he were being forced. He had a small bag in his hands, probably brought fruit or something for someone who was sick. But you could see in his face that he didn't want to be here. His shoulders were slumped, his head was down, he was walking like he was going to hard labor. Hi, Dad, he said, walking into the bedroom. How are you doing? A strange question for a man lying dying. How are you? Like asking a neighbor about the weather. Emiliano opened his eyes and smiled. His face immediately revitalized, his vigor returning. It's amazing how the presence of loved ones can change a sick person. A few minutes ago, he was barely breathing, but now he looked almost awake. Osvaldo, my son, it's good of you to come. Sit down and tell me about the fields and the harvest. Osvaldo sat down on the edge of the bed, but he was stiff, ready to get up and leave at any moment. He talked about the work, about the plans for the next season, about the new workers he had to hire. He spoke quickly, as if he wanted to finish and leave as soon as possible. Emiliano listened avidly, asking questions. These fields were his life. He had started with the small plot he had inherited from his grandfather and gradually expanded the farm. Now we had more than 50 hectares, and all thanks to his labor. Do you remember when we bought our first tractor? Emiliano asked, and his eyes glistened with memories. You were still small, about 10 years old, but you were already helping me to choose. You said that a red tractor would work better than a blue one. I remember, Papa, Osvaldo answered, but there was no warmth in his voice. It was formal politeness, nothing more. And how happy you were when I let you drive for the first time. You were so proud you bragged to all the neighborhood boys. That was a long time ago. Osvaldo clearly didn't want to remember his childhood. Several times he glanced at his watch, and it did not escape his father's attention. Emiliano always felt people, understood their mood without words. Son, why don't you stay for dinner tonight? Emiliano asked, and in his voice you could hear a plea. Mom will cook your favorite chicken and rice. It's been a long time since we've been together as a family. Osvaldo squirmed in his seat and looked guiltily at his father. But only for a second, then his face became hard and determined. It won't work, Dad. I've got things to do. Palomita's waiting. We were going to see her sister today. We promised last week. Business is more important than a sick father? I couldn't help myself. The words came out of my mouth. I didn't want to fight, especially in front of Emiliano, but I couldn't keep quiet. How could I choose a visit to my wife's sister over my last hours with my dying father? Osvaldo turned to me, and irritation flashed in his eyes. The same irritation he'd felt as a child when I asked him to help around the house or share toys with his younger brother. Mom, I have my own family now. I can't sit here every day. Someone has to work to earn money. Severiano works too, but he finds time to visit his father, I replied. Severiano is not married. It's easier for him. He has no obligations to his wife. Do you have obligations to your parents? Mom, don't start, please. I came here in spite of everything. In spite of everything. It's like you're doing us a great favor. I wanted to say something harsh, but I felt Emiliano squeeze my hand weakly, urging me to calm down. He didn't like it when we fought, especially in front of him. He was always trying to make things right, to find a compromise. All right, son, he said quietly. I understand. Give my regards to Palomita. How is she? Is she sick? No, Dad, she's fine. She sends her regards to you, wishes you a speedy recovery. That's a lie. Palomita never said anything to me, and Emiliano knew it, but he nodded as if he believed it. Osvaldo stood up, kissed his father on the forehead, and quickly left the room. The kiss was hurried, formal, as if he were performing an unpleasant duty. I walked him to the door. On the threshold, he turned around. Mom, if anything happens, call right away. I'll be there. But there was no confidence in his voice, more like formal politeness. That's the kind of thing you say to assuage your conscience. I nodded and closed the door. When I returned to the bedroom, Emiliano was lying there with his eyes closed, but I knew he was awake. Don't be angry with him, he whispered. He's young. He doesn't understand. I did not answer. I wanted to say that Osvaldo was no longer a boy, that he was 34 years old, and that it was time he learned to distinguish the important from the secondary. But Emiliano was already upset, and I shouldn't have added to his bitterness. Maybe he really married early, the husband continued. Palomita is a good girl, but she is a city girl, doesn't understand our traditions. She's been his wife for 5 years. It's time she understood. It took you a while to get used to village life, too, Emiliano reminded her. Remember how you cried the first months? You said you missed the city, your friends. Yes, I remembered. I was 22 years old, and it was the first time I'd lived away from my parents, but I tried to adapt, learned village customs, learned to cook local dishes, made friends with my neighbors. But Palomita had remained a stranger for 5 years. The next days were like one another. I hardly ever left my husband's bed, except when Severiano insisted that I needed to eat or shower. My son helped around the house and around the farm. In the morning, he would go to the fields to check on things, and in the evening, he would return and tell his father everything in detail. Emiliano listened, gave advice, sometimes asked to bring some documents or show reports. Work distracted him from his illness, gave him the feeling that he was still needed, could still be useful. Do not forget to check the pumps on the far side, he said Severiano. The ground is dry there. You need to water more often. I already did, Dad. Everything works. And talk to Don Rufino about the new workers. Tell him to show them how to harvest corn properly, or they'll make a mess of things. Okay, Dad, don't worry, it'll be done. Severiano wrote down all of his father's requests in an old notebook and then faithfully fulfilled each one, even the smallest ones that could be ignored. For him, it was not just a job, but a way to show his love and respect for his father. Osvaldo rarely showed up. 3 times in 2 weeks and not for long. He would come, ask how his father was feeling, tell him news from the fields, and then leave. Each time he found a reason not to stay. Palomita wasn't feeling well, or he had to meet with suppliers, or the truck broke down, and he had to go to the workshop. Always something more important than a dying father. One time he arrived in the morning when Emiliano was still asleep. Sat in a chair, took the newspaper, but didn't read, just waited for his father to wake up. After half an hour, he got bored and nervous. "Should we wake him up?" he asked. "I don't have much time." "Let him sleep," I said. "Every hour is hard for him, but I came here on purpose. And now it turns out I wasted my time." "You wasted your time with your dying father?" "That's not what I meant, Mom. I just have a meeting in an hour." "What meeting could be more important?" "Business. With the grain buyers. If this deal falls through, we're going to lose a lot of money." In the end, he didn't wait for his father to wake up and left. He left a note on the nightstand. "Dad, I came to see you. I'll see you soon. Feel better, Osvaldo." Emiliano woke up an hour later, read the note and smiled sadly. "At least he came," he said. "It's already good." But I could see how upset he was. After each short visit from his eldest son, his husband became sadder, spoke less, slept more. Osvaldo didn't notice it or didn't want to notice it. One evening, when we were left alone, Emiliano said, "Valeria, I must have been a bad father. Osvaldo shuns me." "You were a great father," I replied. "He just has different priorities now." "Maybe you were too strict with him as a child? Did you make him work too hard?" "Nothing like that. You taught him life, responsibility. Why doesn't Severiano shun you?" "I don't know. Severiano is kinder or something, or maybe he doesn't have a wife who turns against us. Palomita is a good girl, but she's a city girl. She doesn't understand our traditions, our family values." Emiliano sighed and turned to the wall. The conversation had upset him, and I regretted bringing it up, but it was hard to keep silent, too. I wanted to talk, to share my pain. On Wednesday night, Emiliano's condition worsened dramatically. He almost did not eat, hardly spoke, often suffocated. His face turned completely gray, his lips blue. I called Dr. Morales, who arrived, examined the patient, and shook his head. "There's not much time left, Mrs. Valeria. Hours, maybe 24 hours, no more. You'd better call a priest." "Doctor, isn't there anything we can do? Shouldn't we put him in the hospital?" "No, ma'am. The hospital will only make him worse. Let him die at home, surrounded by his family. It's better for him." Father Miguel arrived Thursday morning. Emiliano confessed, took communion, and felt a little better. The priest sat with us, prayed, blessed the whole family. He too had known us for many years, baptized both of our sons, married Osvaldo and Palomita. "Don Emiliano has lived a worthy life," he told me quietly. "The Lord will receive him with joy." As the priest was leaving, he said to me quietly, "Prepare yourself, Senora. The Lord will take him to himself soon, and call your sons to say goodbye." I called Osvaldo and asked him to come. I told him that my father was very sick, that the priest was there, that this might be the last chance to say goodbye to him. He promised to come by evening, but didn't show up until late at night. Emiliano was already asleep, breathing heavily and intermittently. "How is he?" Osvaldo asked in a whisper. "Not well," I answered. "The doctor says that the end is near, maybe tonight." "I see." He sat down in the chair and we waited. Severiano was dozing on the couch in the living room, and I was sitting by the bed, holding Emiliano's hand. After an hour, Osvaldo fidgeted restlessly and went out into the yard to smoke several times. It was obvious that it was hard for him to be here, that he did not know how to behave at such times. "Mom, how long can it last?" he asked in a whisper. "I don't know, son. Maybe an hour, maybe until morning. And if it's till morning, I should probably go home, shouldn't I?" "Palomita's alone, worrying." "Suit yourself." I didn't try to persuade him. If a man doesn't understand the importance of the moment, it's useless to explain. Around 3 in the morning, Emiliano woke up. He looked at me, then at Osvaldo, smiled weakly. "It's good that you're both here," he whispered. "Dad, it's going to be okay," Osvaldo said, but his voice shook. "It will be, son. Just don't leave each other. Family is sacred. Help your mom. She'll be alone." "Sure, Dad. Don't worry. And don't sell the fields. This is our land, grandfather's land. Pass it on to your children and grandchildren. Okay, Dad. Emiliano closed his eyes and never opened them again. His breathing became weaker and weaker. I stroked his hand, whispering something affectionate, though I wasn't sure he heard me. I talked about how we'd met, how we'd gotten married, how we'd rejoiced at the birth of our sons. I remembered our happy years, when we were young and full of plans. Osvaldo sat silent, occasionally wiping his eyes. Maybe in these last hours he realized what he was losing. Maybe he regretted his indifference. But it was too late to change anything. Emiliano died at dawn, when the first rays of sunlight entered the bedroom through the gaps in the curtains. He simply stopped breathing, quietly, without agony, holding my hand in his weak fingers. Severiano was asleep in the next room, and Osvaldo had just gone out into the yard for a smoke. I sat by my husband's side for a few minutes longer, unable to believe that it was over. Then I kissed him on the forehead, covered him with a sheet, and went to wake Severiano. His son was asleep on the living room couch, covered with an old blanket. When I touched his shoulder, he immediately opened his eyes. "Mom, what's wrong?" "Daddy's dead, son." Severiano sat up, ran his hand over his face, and cried quietly. I put my arm around him and we sat in silence for a while. Then he got up, went to the phone, and began to call Father Miguel. I listened to his discreet voice and thought about how much there was to do. I had to organize the funeral, notify the relatives, prepare the memorial dinner. At such moments, grief recedes before the need for action. The priest arrived an hour later. Father Miguel was a short, stout man in his 50s with kind eyes and a soft voice. He had served our parish for over 20 years and knew every family. When one of the parishioners died, he always came himself, never sending an assistant. "I am sorry for your loss, Senora Valeria," he said, taking off his hat. Don Emiliano was a good man, a true Christian. We walked to the bedroom. The priest read a prayer, sprinkled the body with holy water, blessed the deceased. Then we sat down at the kitchen table, and Father Miguel began to ask about the details of the funeral, where we wanted to be buried, what kind of service to order, how many people we expected. "In the parish cemetery, there is a good place near the grave of Don Manuel," said the priest. "Your father-in-law is resting there. Don Emiliano will be next to his father." It was the right thing to do. Emiliano had always said he wanted to lie next to his parents. There was a family plot in the cemetery that his grandfather had bought when he was young. His parents, his wife, and 2 infants who died in infancy were already laid to rest there. Now Emiliano will join them. "We'll schedule the funeral service for the day after tomorrow, Friday," Father Miguel continued. "This will give time for the relatives to arrive and for you to prepare everything." Friday. So tomorrow is Thursday, the day of preparation, and the day after tomorrow is the funeral. I had a lot of things to do. Buy a coffin, order wreaths, prepare food for the wake. It's good to have Agustina. I couldn't have done it without my friend. Severiano took care of all the formalities. He went to the city to register the death, order the coffin, make arrangements with the cemetery. I called Agustina and asked her to come over. She had been my best friend for over 20 years. We met when I first came to the village as a young wife. Agustina lived in the neighborhood then. She had a little daughter, and I was expecting my first child. We immediately became friends, helping each other with everything. Agustina arrived 2 hours later. A short, overweight woman with graying hair and intelligent eyes. She always knew what to do in difficult moments, never lost or panicked. When her husband died 5 years ago, I helped her in the same way. "Valeria, honey," she said, hugging me. "Hang in there. Everything's going to be okay." We sat in the kitchen, and Agustina began to make a list of things to do. She had always had a good memory and organizational skills. When she was young, she had worked as a secretary in the village council and was used to planning and writing things down. "How many people are you expecting for the wake?" she asked. 30 people, probably, maybe more. Emiliano knew a lot of people. He was respected. "So we should cook for 40. It's always better to have a reserve." "What are we going to do for food?" "We've made a menu. Rice with chicken, beans, vegetable salad, meat, bread, fruit. Traditional dishes for a wake in our area." Agustina took care of the cooking, and I had to go to the market to get groceries. "Where's Oswaldo?" a friend asked. At home. He was here last night when Emiliano was dying. He's probably sleeping now. Call him. Tell him to come and help. I dialed my eldest son's number. The phone buzzed for a long time. Then Palomita answered. She sounded sleepy, disgruntled. Hello, who is this? Palomita, it's Valeria. Give me Osvaldo, please. He's asleep. What happened? Emiliano died this morning. Silence. Then, oh, what a pity. I'll wake Osvaldo. A minute later, the son came to the phone. His voice was tired, hoarse. Mom? I'm sorry, when's the funeral? Friday. Please come, there's a lot to do. Okay, I will. But not now, later. I have to go to the fields first, check on things. The fields. The day his father died, he's thinking about the fields. I wanted to say something harsh, but I didn't. This is no time for quarrels. All right, Osvaldo, I'll wait for you. Agustina looked at me questioningly. He'll be here later, I explained. He'll go to the fields first. She shook her head, but said nothing. She knew our family well, understood the characters of our sons. We drove to the market in Agustina's car, an old but reliable car that she had bought after her husband's death. She said that a woman should be independent, not depend on other people's help. At the market, we bought everything we needed: meat, vegetables, rice, spices. The sellers recognized me and asked me why we needed so many products. When I explained that my husband had died, they shook their heads sympathetically. Some refused to take money. Don Emiliano was an honest man, said the meat vendor. Always paid on time, never cheated anyone. May he rest in peace. We got home in time for dinner. Severiano had already come from town, bringing the death papers and receipts for the coffin. He said that tomorrow morning they'd bring the coffin and everything for the funeral. Where's Osvaldo? He asked. He promised to come, but he hasn't arrived yet. We began to prepare the food for the wake. Agustina took care of the chicken, and I cooked rice and beans. Severiano helped peel vegetables and set the tables. We worked in silence, each thinking about his own. The death of a loved one makes you rethink many things, remember important moments of life. In the evening, Osvaldo arrived, but not alone, but with 2 workers from the fields. They talked loudly about something near the truck, then the workers left, and Osvaldo came into the house. Hi, Mom. How are things going with the organization? It's okay. Agustina's helping. Severiano went into town. Where have you been? In the fields. There were problems. I had to sort them out. What kind of problems? The workers are relaxed without Dad. They think they can do nothing now. I had to explain who's the boss now. Osvaldo had a hardness in his voice that wasn't there before. It was as if his father's death had loosened his hands, given him the right to say what he thought. Osvaldo, Dad is not even buried yet, Severiano said softly. So what? Work is not waiting. The crops must be harvested, or everything will be lost. You could have waited at least until after the funeral. No, you can't. I'm the eldest in the family now. I'm responsible for everything. Those words sounded like a challenge. I'm the eldest in the family now. It was as if Emiliano had died to pass the power to his son. Agustina looked at me with a sidelong glance. Her eyes were filled with concern. She knew that Osvaldo was behaving wrongly, but she didn't want to interfere in family matters. Son, let's not talk about that now, I said. Help me with the funeral arrangements. Okay, Mom, what do you need to do? We gave him a list of things to do, and he got to work. But it was obvious he had other things on his mind. He got distracted a few times, making phone calls, talking about something. He talked about grain prices, about delivery dates, about new contracts. In the evening, Don Rufino, our foreman, came to see us. An elderly man with a gray mustache and calm eyes. He had been working in our fields for 15 years and was Emiliano's right-hand man. Condolences, Signora Valeria, he said, taking off his hat. Don Emiliano was a good host, a just man. Thank you, Don Rufino. Sit down, have some coffee. The brigadier sat down at the table, but it was obvious he was worried about something. Ma'am, may I speak to you in private? We went out onto the veranda. Don Rufino was silent for a long time, searching for words. Senora, I don't want to interfere in family matters, but I must tell you. Don Osvaldo came to the fields today and behaved strangely. What kind of strange behavior? He demanded to see all the documents, the keys to the warehouses, last month's reports. He said he's the boss now and everything must be under his control. Well, it's only natural. He's the eldest son. Senora! He yelled at the workers, accused them of stealing, threatened to fire half the crew. He said Don Emiliano was too soft and he'd clean up the mess. The brigadier's words hit like a slap in the face. Emiliano's not even cold yet and his son's already rearranging things to his own liking. What exactly did he say? He said he's going to check every sack of grain, every penny, that the old rules are being abolished, it's going to be different. The workers are upset, some of them want to quit. Don Rufino, wait a few days. Let the funeral take place, things will calm down. All right, ma'am, but I should have told you, Don Emiliano never behaved like that. The foreman left and I stayed on the veranda. His words kept running through my mind. So Osvaldo didn't grieve for his father all day, but established his authority in the fields. Is that what loving sons do? When I returned to the house, Osvaldo was talking to Severiano. He was talking fast, excited, waving his arms. You see, you have to rethink everything. Papa was a good man, but a bad businessman. Too trusting, too soft. Workers rode him, stole from him, got lazy. Osvaldo, that's not true, Severiano objected. Daddy was good at business, and the farm prospered. Prosperous? We could have earned twice as much if he had been tougher. We'd have to cut wages, lay off extra workers, raise prices. But people have been with us for years. They're like family. No family. Business is business. Sentimentality is no good. I listened to this conversation and didn't recognize my son. Where was that boy who played with the children of workers, helped sick neighbors, felt sorry for stray dogs? When did he turn into this cruel, calculating man? Mom, Osvaldo turned to me. Tomorrow you have to give me all the documents for the fields, bank accounts, contracts. I am the head of the family now. Everything must be under my control. Son, let's talk about it after the funeral. No, Mom, business can't wait. We have to make it official tomorrow. But we have a will, intervened Severiano. Dad's got it all laid out, who gets what. We'll look at the will later. Right now it is important that the household does not fall apart. I am the eldest son, so I am responsible for everything. Osvaldo sounded so confident, as if he'd been thinking about it for a long time, planning it. Maybe he had been waiting for his father's death so that he could finally become a full-fledged master. Agustina sat at the table and listened silently to our conversation. From time to time, she cast sympathetic glances at me. She knew something was wrong, but she didn't want to interfere. Osvaldo, I said cautiously, maybe we shouldn't be in a hurry. Let people get used to the change. Mom, you don't know business. If you don't show who's boss right away, it'll be too late. The workers need to know that I'm in charge now. What about Severiano? He's a son too. He has a say too. Severiano will be my assistant, if he wants to be. And if he doesn't want to, he can look for work on the side. Severiano turned pale. He'd worked the family fields all his life, considered them his home. Suddenly, his older brother gives him the choice of obeying or leaving. Osvaldo, this is wrong, he said quietly. We're brothers. We should decide everything together. We don't have to do anything. I'm the eldest, so I'm in charge. That's the law. What law? Dad never said that. Daddy was too kind. I'll be fair. That's a strange notion of justice. So what's fair is what's good for Osvaldo. In the evening when my son went home, Agustina and I stayed in the kitchen. Severiano went to bed and we sat at the table drinking tea and talking quietly. Valeria, said a friend, I do not like the way Osvaldo behaves. Neither do I. But what can I do? He really is the eldest son. The eldest son should take care of the family, not set up a dictatorship. Maybe it's grief. People experience the death of loved ones in different ways. Grief makes a person sad, not violent. I think Osvaldo is just showing his true colors. My friend's words struck a nerve. Did I not know my own son well? Had I not seen his true character in 30-odd years? Agustina, what would you do if you were me? I don't know, sweetheart. But I don't think Emiliano would approve of this behavior. We went to bed late. I lay in the dark and thought of my husband. What would he say if he saw his eldest son behaving like that? Emiliano always said that family is sacred, that brothers should support each other. and Osvaldo is ready to kick Severiano out for his own gain. In the morning, before breakfast, a truck arrived with the coffin. Workers brought it into the house, set it up in a large room. The coffin was simple, made of pine, but of high quality. Emiliano did not like luxury, saying that the main thing is not the appearance, but the content. Agustina and I washed the body, dressed Emiliano in his best suit, put him in the coffin. Hard, sad work, but necessary. The last favor one can do for a loved one. By lunchtime, relatives and acquaintances began to arrive. Emiliano's cousins from neighboring villages, old friends, neighbors. Everyone expressed condolences, told good stories about the deceased. The house was filled with people, conversations, tears. Osvaldo didn't arrive until the evening. Again from the fields, again with a businesslike appearance. He greeted the relatives, stood by the coffin, but it was obvious that his thoughts were occupied with other things. "Mom," he came to me. "We need to talk about the documents. Tomorrow after the funeral, we'll go to the notary and get everything drawn up." "Osvaldo, now is not the time for that." "It is, Mom. While all the relatives are here, let them see that I'm the rightful heir." "And Severiano?" "Severiano will get his share, don't worry." But there was no confidence in his voice. Osvaldo spoke as if he had already made up his mind and was not going to consult anyone. Friday morning, I awoke before dawn. My sleep was troubled, full of strange dreams. I dreamed of Emiliano, alive and well, working in the fields and calling me to him. But when I came closer, he disappeared, and I was alone among the empty furrows. When I woke up, I lay in bed for a few minutes, trying to figure out where was reality and where was the dream. Then I remembered that my husband was being buried today. The day promised to be hot. The sun had just appeared from behind the horizon, and the air was already beginning to shiver with heat. In such weather, it is hard to stand in the cemetery, especially for the elderly. But there was no choice. Father Miguel had scheduled the funeral service for 10 in the morning so as not to prolong the suffering. Agustina arrived early, bringing fresh flowers and the last of the food for the memorial table. She and I silently set the table in the large room, arranging plates and glasses. The work helped me not to think about the day ahead, distracted me from heavy thoughts. Severiano got up even earlier than me, went to the cemetery to see if everything was ready for the funeral. He came back and said that the grave had been dug, and the cemetery workers had prepared everything. His face was serious, concentrated. The youngest son was always responsible. He could be relied on in any situation. "Mom, when is Osvaldo coming?" he asked, helping to set up the chairs. "I don't know, son. Yesterday he said he'd be here in the morning." "Should I call him?" "Call him." Severiano dialed his brother's number, but no one answered. The phone buzzed for a long time. Then the answering machine came on. It was strange. Osvaldo usually got up early and was up by 7 in the morning. "Probably still asleep," Severiano said. "Yesterday he left late." "Yes, Osvaldo stayed up late last night, talking to his relatives about documents and inheritance. Uncle Carlos, Emiliano's brother, even wondered why his son was in such a hurry with the paperwork. He said that usually such things are decided a month or two after the funeral, when the first grief subsides." At 8 in the morning, the phone rang. I picked it up, thinking it might be Father Miguel with some clarification. "Hello, Mom?" Osvaldo's voice sounded tense, uncertain. "Osvaldo, son, how good of you to call. When are you coming? There's something else I have to prepare." "Mom, we have a problem. I can't come to the funeral." The words hit me like a bolt of lightning. I didn't even realize what I was hearing. "What do you mean you can't make it? Son, your father's funeral is today." "I understand, Mom, but it's Palomita's birthday. She's been hysterical since this morning, demanding we go to town to celebrate in a restaurant. She says she can't think about death on such a day." I couldn't believe my ears. His wife's birthday is more important than his father's funeral? "Osvaldo, do you realize what you're saying? It's your father in the coffin." "I understand, Mom. But Palomita is in tears, saying I'm choosing the dead over the living. She says if I go to the funeral, she'll leave me." "And you're choosing her ultimatum?" "Mom, look, I have a family, okay? I can't lose my wife over, because of this." "Because of this." He calls his own father's funeral, this. "Son, you can celebrate your birthday tomorrow, but you can bury your father only today." Palomita doesn't understand. She's a city girl. They have other traditions. She says no one in town makes you celebrate your birthday in the cemetery. What nonsense. No one forces her to celebrate in the cemetery, but we can at least move the celebration to tonight or tomorrow. At 9:30, the men from the funeral home arrived. Men in black suits with serious faces. They carried the coffin with the body into a special car decorated with flowers and ribbons. Everything was done carefully, with respect for the deceased. Relatives and friends began to gather at the house. Uncle Carlos and his wife arrived, Emiliano's cousins, neighbors, workers from the fields. Don Rufino came in his best suit, holding a wreath from the whole brigade. Old men from the village who remembered Emiliano's father also came to say goodbye. They all asked where Osvaldo was. I answered that he was a little delayed, he would be here soon. But time passed, and the eldest son was still missing. People started looking at each other, whispering among themselves. Yes, I remember. Palomita was born on August 15th, the same day as the funeral. Of course she wants to celebrate, not stand in the cemetery in the hot sun. And Osvaldo chose his wife's birthday over his father's funeral. Son, at least come to the cemetery. Bury your father, and then go back to your wife. I can't, Mom. I'm sorry. Osvaldo, this is your last duty to your father. Mom, Dad's dead. He doesn't care who goes to the funeral anymore. Palomita is alive. She needs my help. Those words were like a stab in the heart. Papa doesn't care. How can you say that about the man who gave you life, raised you, taught you, passed on your life's work? Son, do you realize what you're saying? I do. The dead don't care, but the living are more important. Osvaldo! Mom, don't make a scene. I made a choice. Tell them I'm sorry. Tell them it's a family emergency. I wanted to tell him something else, to explain how important it was, how much it hurt me to hear such words. But Osvaldo continued. And anyway, Mom, it's time for you to realize that times have changed. I'm no longer a little boy who has to obey. I have my own family, my own priorities. And your father's memory isn't a priority? It's in the heart, not in the cemetery. I don't need to be lectured about duty. His voice was getting harsher, angrier, as if I were interfering with his life, demanding the impossible. Osvaldo, how can you? It is your father who lies in the coffin. Enough, he shouted. I've had enough of these lamentations. Dad's dead, that's it. Life goes on, and I don't need to get hysterical like an old hanger. An old hanger-on. My own son called me an old coat rack. For what? For asking him to see his father off? For reminding him of his duty as a son? Osvaldo. That's it, Mom. This conversation is over. Goodbye. He hung up. I stood there for a while with the phone in my hand, unable to believe what had happened. My eldest son, the one I had such high hopes for, had refused to bury his own father, and called me an old hanger-on. Severiano came over to me, took my hand. Mom, what did he say? He's not coming. He said Palomita was sick. And really? It's actually Palomita's birthday today. Yes, I remember. Palomita was born on August 15th, the same day as the funeral. Of course she wants to celebrate, not stand in the cemetery in the hot sun. And Osvaldo chose his wife's birthday over his father's funeral. Mom, why don't we postpone the funeral until tomorrow? No, son, everything's ready. People are here. We can't let one selfish man ruin the whole thing. I went to the guests and announced that Osvaldo couldn't attend the funeral for family reasons. People nodded silently, but there was condemnation in their eyes. Everyone realized that there could be no serious family emergency. It was just that the son didn't want to bury his father. Uncle Carlos came to me and said quietly, Valeria, this is wrong. Osvaldo should be here. I know, Carlos, but I can't help it. Emiliano wouldn't approve of this behavior. Emiliano wouldn't approve of a lot of things. We drove to the cemetery. A long procession of cars stretched along the dusty road. The funeral car with the coffin was in front, followed by our car with the next of kin, and then all the others. A usual picture for our place, but today it was missing one person, the eldest son of the deceased. Many people had gathered at the cemetery. Emiliano was known and respected not only in our village, but also in neighboring villages. People with whom he worked, traded grain, bought machinery came. Everyone wanted to see an honest man off on his last journey. Father Miguel served the funeral service. He read prayers, censored, spoke about the soul of the deceased. I stood near the coffin and listened to the familiar words, but my thoughts were elsewhere. Where is Osvaldo now? What is he doing while we bury his father? Is he celebrating his wife's birthday at some restaurant? The coffin was lowered into the grave. People threw handfuls of earth, put flowers. Severiano stood next to me, holding my hand. He understood how hard it was for me, how painful it was to see an empty place where my eldest son should stand. Rest in peace, Don Emiliano, said Don Rufino, throwing the earth into the grave. You were a good master, a just man. Many people wept. The women wailed loudly. The men wiped their eyes in silence. Emiliano was truly loved. His death was a loss for everyone, and only his own son was not there at this sad hour. After the cemetery, we returned home. The memorial dinner was held quietly, without unnecessary words. People ate, remembered the deceased, told good stories about him. But all the time, Oswaldo's absence was felt. His empty chair at the table was a reminder that the family had cracked. I remember how Don Emiliano helped me when my cow got sick, one of the neighbors said. He brought a veterinarian, bought medicine, and didn't take any money. He said that neighbors should help each other. And when my house burned down, he was the first to come to help build a new one, added another. He worked from morning till evening and sent his own workers. Such stories were told throughout the evening. Emiliano was really a good man, helping everyone who needed it. And such a man deserved that his son saw him off. Toward evening, the guests began to leave. They said goodbye, expressed their condolences once again, and promised to help if they needed anything. Uncle Carlos stayed longer than the others, wanting to talk to me alone. Valeria, he said when we were alone, I don't like Osvaldo's behavior. Emiliano would be upset if he saw it. I know, Carlos. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. I need time to think about it. If you need help, I'm here for you. Emiliano was like a brother to me. I wouldn't let his family get hurt. When everyone had gone, Severiano, Agustina, and I were left to clear the table. We worked in silence, each thinking about his own. It had been a hard day, full of bitterness and disappointment. Mom, Severiano said, putting the plates away, maybe Osvaldo will come tomorrow and explain himself. I don't know, son, but after what he said today, I'm not sure I want to see him. What exactly did he say? I told Severiano about the phone conversation, about the words about the dead not caring, about the old hangar. My son listened in silence, his face darkening with each word. Did he really call you that? Yes, it's horrible. How can you talk to your mother like that? I don't know, son. I guess I didn't raise him right. It's not your fault, Mom. It's just that Osvaldo has changed, or showed his true colors. Agustina nodded. Valeria, I knew right away that there was something wrong with that boy. Even yesterday when he talked about the workers, about the new order. A normal son doesn't behave like that. Maybe it's the influence of Palomita, suggested Severiano. She's from the city. They have different ideas about family. Maybe. But Osvaldo is a grown man. He should know for himself what is right and what is wrong. We finished cleaning and sat on the veranda. The sun was setting. The air was getting cooler. At times like this, Emiliano liked to sit here, smoking a pipe, talking about business. Now his chair was empty, and that made it even sadder. You know, I said, today, as we stood at the grave, I thought about the fact that Emiliano had lived a decent life. He worked honestly, helped people, raised children, and one of those kids didn't even come to see him off. Don't think about it, Mom, Severiano consoled her. The main thing that Dad knew, you loved him, I loved him, and Osvaldo will realize his mistake. I'm not sure. I think he's already made a choice between us and Palomita, and he didn't choose us. Agustina took my hand. Valeria, you're not alone. You have Severiano, you have me, you have friends. We'll help you through this time. Thank you. I don't know what I'd do without you. At night, I couldn't sleep for a long time. I lay in bed replaying the day's events in my head. The funeral without my eldest son, his harsh words, the empty chair at the memorial table. It all seemed like a bad dream, but unfortunately it was reality. At one point, I stood up and walked to the window. It was quiet outside. Only the noise of cars on the highway could be heard in the distance. An ordinary country night, calm and peaceful. But there was no peace in my soul. Too much pain, too much disappointment. I wondered what Osvaldo was doing now. Sleeping peacefully after his holiday dinner? Or is he still racked with conscience? Does he realize he's made an unforgivable mistake? Probably not. If he did, he would have come to apologize. But he's not here and probably won't be here tomorrow either. He made a choice and will defend it to the end. The week after the funeral passed in a strange silence. The house seemed empty and alien without Emiliano. I went from room to room trying to do the usual things, but it was difficult. I made breakfast for two, and then I remembered I was eating alone. She set 2 dishes on the table, even though Severiano left for the fields early in the morning and didn't return until the evening. My youngest son tried to support me as best he could. He told me about the work in the fields, brought fresh vegetables from the vegetable garden, and helped with the household chores. But I saw that it was hard for him too. He had lost not only his father, but also his older brother. Osvaldo never showed up, never called, as if we no longer existed. Neighbors came by almost every day. They brought food, offered to help, asked how I was feeling. But everyone avoided talking about Osvaldo. His absence at the funeral became a topic of gossip throughout the neighborhood. People shook their heads, reminiscing about how this had never happened in their families. Don Rufino came by every morning to report on the work in the fields. He said that the harvest was going smoothly. The workers were working diligently. The machinery was not breaking down. But when he spoke of Osvaldo, his face became tense. Senora Valeria, Don Osvaldo came to the fields yesterday, he said on Tuesday morning. He again demanded to see all the documents, checked the warehouses, and he fired 2 workers. He said they were stealing grain, although there was no evidence. Good people, worked for us for many years. What did he fire them for? Because a sack of grain in the warehouse wasn't in the right place. He said it was a sign of theft. I listened to the foreman and felt anger rising in my chest. Emiliano never fired people without a good reason. He said that workers are family, and you don't do that to family. Don Rufino, what do the other workers say? They're afraid, ma'am. They think Don Osvaldo will fire them too. Some are already looking for work elsewhere. This is our best crew. These people know the fields like the back of their hand. I know, Senora, but what can I do? Don Osvaldo says he's the boss now. On Wednesday, Osvaldo finally came to our house, but not to apologize or explain himself. He came as the new owner, demanding papers and keys. Mom, I need all the papers for the fields, bank documents, contracts with buyers, he said without even saying hello normally. Hello, son. How are you doing? How's Palomita? She's fine. Where are the documents? Dry, formal, like he's talking to a stranger. No apologies for the funeral, no words of regret, just business requirements. The files are in my dad's office, in the safe. But why do you need them so urgently? I told you I'm the eldest in the family now. I need to know what we have, how much money we have, what our obligations are. Son, we can discuss this quietly at the table. Let's eat and talk. I don't have time, Mom. I've got business to attend to. Just give me the paperwork, that's all. He went into Emiliano's office like it was his own room. I followed him, opened the safe, took out the files. Osvaldo immediately began flipping through them, writing something down in his notebook. Not bad, he muttered. There's enough money in the accounts, the fields bring a good income. We can develop the business further. Can grow the business. For him, his father's death was just a change of management in the family firm. No grief, no regret for the loss of a loved one. Mom, where's Dad's will? At the lawyer, Licenciado Castillo. He always handles our cases. I see. Tomorrow I'll go to him, make it official. What about Severiano? He's a son too, he has rights. Severiano will get his share. But I'll be in charge naturally. Naturally. There was nothing natural in his behavior. It would have been natural to attend his father's funeral. It would have been natural to consult with his mother and younger brother. It would have been natural to show a modicum of sympathy. On Thursday morning, I couldn't stand it. I got dressed and went to Agostina's house. A friend lived 3 blocks from us, in a small house with a front garden full of flowers. After her husband died, she sold the big house and bought this smaller one. She said one woman didn't need much space. Agustina met me on the doorstep, immediately realized from my face that the matter was serious. Valeria, what's wrong? Come in, sit down. We went into the kitchen. She put the kettle on, took out some cookies, but I couldn't eat. The words were coming out. Agustina, I can't keep quiet anymore. I have to tell you everything about Osvaldo. Tell me, sweetheart, I'm listening. And I did. About how Osvaldo didn't come to the funeral because it was his wife's birthday. About his rude words. About the old hangar. The way he fired workers and intimidated people. About his indifference to his father's memory and his demands to hand over all the property to him immediately. Agustina listened in silence, sometimes shaking her head, sometimes sighing. When I finished, she was silent for a long time, then she said, Valeria, this is terrible. I knew that Osvaldo had changed, but I didn't think he had changed so much. What do I do, Agustina? How do I live with it? You don't have to live with it. A son like that doesn't deserve an inheritance. But he's the eldest by law. By law, the inheritance goes to whoever the owner bequeaths it to. And you are the owner right now. My friend's words made me think. Indeed, after Emiliano's death, all the property passed to me. And I have the right to dispose of it as I see fit. But what will people say? Everyone knows that Osvaldo is the eldest son. People will say that justice has been done. Has anyone ever seen a son not attend his father's funeral because of his wife's birthday? It's an embarrassment to the whole family. What if Osvaldo protests, sues? Let him sue. But what will he tell the judge? That he's entitled to the inheritance even though he didn't honor his father with a funeral? Any judge will know who's right. Agustina spoke convincingly, and I felt she was right. Osvaldo really doesn't deserve an inheritance. He chose Palomita over family, money over his father's memory, power over love. But how to do it? How to change the will? Go to Licenciado Castillo. He'll explain everything. The main thing is to act quickly before Osvaldo has time to take over. And if I'm wrong, what if he comes to his senses, repents? Valeria, have you seen any remorse in his behavior? Have you heard a single word of apology? No, I didn't see or hear one word of apology. Osvaldo acted as if he were right about everything and we were wrong about him. Agustina went on. When my Ramon died, his nephew started claiming the inheritance too. He said he was a man, so he should inherit the house. And I was just a wife, a temporary mistress. But I stood up for myself, defended my rights, and rightly so. That's different, Agustina. That nephew was a stranger, but Osvaldo is still my son. A son who calls his mother an old hanger-on and doesn't come to his father's funeral is no son. He's a stranger. Her friend's words hurt her ears, but there was truth in them. Osvaldo had indeed become a stranger. I don't know when it happened, but the fact remains. We stayed at Agustina's until lunchtime. My friend urged me to act decisively, not to let Osvaldo destroy what Emiliano had created. She told me stories of other families where ungrateful children ruined their parents, sold the family property, threw out younger brothers and sisters. Valeria, think of Severiano, she said at last. He's a good boy, loved his father, takes care of you. Doesn't he deserve a better share than to be a handmaiden to his older brother? It was a decisive argument. Severiano really did deserve better. He had worked the family fields all his life, helped his father, never crossed the line, never demanded more than he was entitled to. And now he had to obey a capricious brother who hadn't even bothered to see his father off? Okay, I said. I'll go see a lawyer. That's right, sweetheart. Emiliano would approve. I went home and told Severiano I was going into town on business. I didn't tell him what kind of business. I thought I'd check with my lawyer first and then talk to my son. Licenciado Ramiro Castillo received clients in a small office in the center of town. A middle-aged man with a neat beard and attentive eyes behind his glasses. He had been handling our family's business for about 10 years now, knew all of our relatives well. Senora Valeria, I'm sorry for your loss, he said, rising from the table. Don Emiliano was a fine man. Gracias, licenciado. It's about the will. Of course, sit down. I was just preparing the papers. Don Osvaldo called yesterday to set up an appointment for tomorrow. Licenciado, is it possible to change the will? The lawyer looked at me in surprise over his glasses. Change it? What exactly would you like to change? I want to sign over everything to Severiano. Oswaldo should receive only monetary compensation. Ma'am, that's a big decision. Are you sure? I'm sure. May I ask why? I told the lawyer everything I told Agustina about the funeral, about the rudeness, about the treatment of the workers. Licenciado Castillo listened attentively, sometimes making notes in his notebook. I understand your resentment, Senora, he said when I had finished. But I must warn you of the possible consequences. Don Osvaldo can challenge such a will in court. On what grounds? On the grounds that he is the eldest son and entitled to a larger share of the inheritance. Can't his behavior be grounds for disinheritance? It can if the behavior is deemed unworthy. But that would have to be proven in court. What would have to be proved? That he didn't go to his father's funeral? The whole county knows about it. That's a good argument, Senora. But Don Osvaldo can say he had a family emergency. What circumstances could be more important than his father's funeral? You're right, but I must warn you of all the risks. Licenciado Castillo took a blank will form out of the cupboard and put it on the table. If you're determined, we can make a new will right now. All the fields, the house, the bank accounts go to Severiano, and Osvaldo gets a monetary compensation of, what do you think is fair? 50,000 pesos, I said after a moment's thought. That would be enough to buy a small plot of land or start a business. That's good. And what about the terms of inheritance? Maybe you can set some requirements for Severiano? What kind of demands? For example, that he takes care of you, doesn't sell the fields without your consent, keeps jobs for current employees. That was a good idea. I didn't want the fields to go to a man who would treat them like Oswaldo, firing people, thinking only about profit. Yeah, write all that down, and don't change the manager without a good reason. Don Rufino is an honest man. He knows his business. It took us over an hour to draw up the will. Licenciado Castillo carefully wrote down every clause, explaining to me the legal details. When the document was ready, he read it aloud, and I was convinced that everything was written correctly. Senora, when do you want to tell your sons about the changes? Don't tell anyone yet. We'll wait for the right time. All right, but keep in mind that if Don Osvaldo comes tomorrow to get the documents, I'll be obliged to tell him that the will has been changed. Can that be avoided? It can be avoided. Tell him you've decided to reconsider and ask him to come back in a week. Okay, I'll call him. I left the lawyer's office feeling relieved. I'd finally done what I had to do. Justice had been served and Severiano would get what he deserved. On the way home, I called Osvaldo. Son, the lawyer wants to reschedule the meeting for a week. He has an emergency. He can't make it tomorrow. What do you mean he can't? I made an appointment. It can't be helped. You'll have to wait a while. Mom, I need to get this done as soon as possible. I have a business proposition. I need the title deeds. What kind of offers? They want to buy part of the crop at a good price, but I need assurances that I'm the real owner. Wait a week, your business won't fall apart. Osvaldo mumbled something and hung up. He had obviously expected to quickly formalize everything and begin to dispose of the property as he saw fit. But now he would have to wait. Time was running out. Osvaldo called several times, asking when he could meet with a lawyer, but each time I found new reasons for delay. Then Licenciado Castillo was on a business trip, then he had a court hearing, then I had to collect additional documents. My son was annoyed, but he couldn't help it. During this time, life was slowly falling into a new rut. Severiano completely took over the management of the fields, working from morning to night. The workers respected him. Don Rufino praised him for his judgment and fairness. The crops were fully harvested, and the grain was sold at a good price. The youngest son was as good as his father at farming. I gradually got used to life without Emiliano. The grief didn't go away, but it was quieter, calmer. I learned to cook for one person, not to put an extra appliance at the table, not to wait for the sound of his footsteps on the veranda. Agustina often came by to help around the house. We went to the market, to church, to the neighbors. Oswaldo never showed up in the fields again. After he was politely asked several times not to interfere with the work until the inheritance was formalized, he stopped going there. He said on the phone that he was busy with other things, looking for new business opportunities. Sometimes I wondered if I was doing the right thing. After all, Osvaldo is my son, my firstborn. Maybe I should have given him another chance, explained how hurt I was by his behavior at the funeral. But then I remembered his words about the old hanger, about the fact that the dead don't care, and the doubts passed. In mid-September, I met with Licenciado Castillo and asked him to send Oswaldo a copy of the new will. It was time to open the cards to show my son the consequences of his choices. Senora, are you sure you are ready for his reaction? The lawyer asked. Don Osvaldo could take the news very badly. I am ready, Licenciado. The longer we wait, the worse it will get. I'll send him a copy of the will. I'll send him a copy of the will with a cover letter. I'll explain that it's final and effective immediately. And what if he wants to come and see me as soon as he gets it? That's his right. But remember, the will has already been drawn up and probated. He can't change it, only contest it in court. The letter was mailed on Monday. I knew Oswaldo would receive it on Tuesday or Wednesday, so I prepared for a storm. I warned Severiano there might be a scandal and asked him not to go far from home. Mom, what exactly did you write in the will? Asked the youngest son. All the fields, the house, and the bank accounts go to you. Osvaldo gets 50,000 pesos of compensation. Severiano turned pale. Mom, that's a huge responsibility. What if I can't handle it? You'll do it, son. You're smart, honest, the workers respect you. And I'll be there to give you advice. And Oswaldo, he'll go crazy. Let him be mad. He's made his choice now, let him live with the consequences. Tuesday night the phone rang. I picked it up and heard Oswaldo screaming furiously. Mother, what the hell did you do? What will? Hello, son. Did you get the letter from the lawyer? I did. Are you out of your mind? How could you give everything to Severiano? Very simple. I went to Licenciado Castillo and rewrote the will. On what grounds? I'm the eldest son. I'm the heir. You were the heir when you acted like one. Now you're just a stranger who didn't come to his own father's funeral. Why are you picking on this funeral? It's a family thing. Even now he didn't understand. He didn't feel guilty. For him, skipping his father's funeral was just an everyday misunderstanding. Osvaldo, you called me an old hanger-on. You said the dead don't care. You chose your wife's birthday over remembering your father. After that, you're no longer my son. Mom, I said that in my heart. I'm sorry if I offended you, but that's no reason to disinherit me. It's too late to apologize. It's been a month, and he only remembered them now when he heard about the will. Reason or no reason, the decision's made. Live on whatever money you get. 50,000? That's ridiculous. The fields are worth 10 times that. You'll have enough for a small plot of land. You'll work on your own, not on someone else's back. I won't let it go. I'll go to court. I'll contest that fake will. Go ahead. Tell the judge why you didn't come to your father's funeral. We'll see what he says. Oswaldo was silent for a moment, then he spoke more softly but angrily. You know what, Mother? Severiano did it all. He turned you against me, whispering nonsense. He thinks he's outsmarted his big brother. Severiano had nothing to do with it. It's my decision. I don't believe it. He's not capable of such a thing on his own. Someone must have helped him. Maybe your girlfriend Agustina. Or did your lawyer put him up to it? No one put me up to it. It just opened my eyes to what you've become. Okay, well, we'll talk about it when we meet. I'll come by tomorrow. We'll figure it out. You don't have to come. We don't have anything else to talk about. Yes, we do. I'm not going to let myself get screwed over like this. He hung up on me. I realized that tomorrow was going to be a hard day. Wednesday morning, Severiano wanted to go to the fields, but I asked him to stay home. Son, Osvaldo promised to come. It's better if you're close by. Do you think he'll fight? I'm sure he will. He's very angry. Okay, Mom. Just in case, I'll call Uncle Carlos. He can be a witness too. Oswaldo arrived at lunchtime. I heard the sound of his car and looked out the window. He was walking toward the house, his face grim, his hands clenched into fists. He looked like he was ready for a fight. He didn't even knock. He burst into the house and started shouting, "Where's that crazy woman? Mother, come out! We'll talk!" I came out of the kitchen, Severiano out of his room. Osvaldo stood in the middle of the living room, breathing heavily as if he'd run a kilometer. Are you happy? He attacked me. Did you decide to rob your son? Don't yell in my house, I said calmly. If you want to talk, talk normally. I don't want to talk normally. You're out of your mind. How can you give everything to your youngest son? You can. I did it. On what grounds? By law, the eldest son is the heir. By law, the heir is the one to whom the bequest is made. I bequeathed it to Severiano. Why did you deprive me? Why did you punish me? He really didn't understand. It was a mystery to him why his mother had disinherited him. For not coming to his father's funeral, for calling me an old hanger-on, for saying the dead don't care. How many times can we talk about this? He made a mistake, he apologized. It doesn't happen to anybody. It doesn't happen to me. It didn't happen to your father. Osvaldo paced the room, waving his arms looking for arguments. Mom, I told you it was Palomita's birthday. She would have been upset if I hadn't gone with her. And you chose her upset over remembering your father. Dad would have understood. He knew family came first. Dad would never understand. To him, family is parents, children, brothers, not a naughty wife. Palomita isn't cranky. She's just different, a city girl. Then live with her in the city on your 50,000. Osvaldo stopped, looked at me with angry eyes. You know what, Mother? I see who set you up. It was your pet Severiano. He took advantage of Daddy's absence and turned you against me. Osvaldo, stop it! Severiano intervened. Mom made her own decision. Really? Turned to him older brother. Did you think of it yourself or did someone tell you? No one told me anything. It's just that after your behavior at the funeral— What behavior? What did I do? You didn't come to see your father off. And you did, so what? Are you better than me? You think you're the boss of the family now? Severiano blushed, but he kept his cool. I don't think I'm better. It's just that I love my father and I didn't betray his memory. Betrayed! Osvaldo roared. How dare you? I dare because it's the truth. Is that so? So I'm a traitor and you're a saint? Osvaldo took a step toward his brother with his fists clenched. I knew there was going to be a fight. Son, stop it, I shouted. But it was too late. Osvaldo swung at Severiano, but he dodged and pushed his brother in the chest. Osvaldo staggered back but held his ground and lunged at the younger man with his fists. They clashed in the middle of the room, pushing each other, trying to hit each other. Severiano was younger, but stronger and calmer. Osvaldo fought fiercely but ineptly, shouting more than hitting. You think you stole my inheritance? He yelled, trying to grab his brother by the throat. I'll show you! Nobody stole anything, replied Severiano, pushing him away. You lost everything yourself. They fought for several minutes, knocking over a chair, breaking a vase on the table. I shouted for them to stop, but the brothers didn't hear me. Finally, Severiano caught a good moment and hit Osvaldo in the face. He staggered back and touched his lip with his hand, his fingers bloody. You broke my lip, he muttered confusedly. Stop fighting, Severiano said, breathing heavily. You're acting like a drunk in a tavern. Osvaldo stood rubbing his broken lip and staring at the blood on his hand. His face was contorted with anger. All right, all right. He spoke slowly, angrily. Do you think you've won? Do you think I'll accept it? Osvaldo, go away, I said. We have nothing more to talk about. Oh, yes, yes. He laughed a bad laugh. I'll show you. I'll go to court. I'll contest the will. I'll find witnesses that you, Mother, are not in your right mind. And you, he pointed his finger at Severiano, will answer for the attack. Everyone saw who attacked who, the younger brother said calmly. We'll see about that. I have enough money for good lawyers. I'll sue the shit out of you. Osvaldo, get out of my house, I said firmly. Your house? He stormed out. This is my father's house, and you are a temporary lodger. This house was bequeathed to Severiano along with the rest of his estate. We'll see who gets it, shouted Osvaldo, backing toward the exit. Don't think you can get rid of me so easily. I will make such a life for you that you will regret your decision. I already have, I said coldly. Regret what? He stopped. That I gave birth to such a son. The words hung in the air. Osvaldo froze with his mouth open as if he'd been slapped. Severiano was silent too. I didn't expect to say it, but the words came out of my mouth. Are you serious? Osvaldo whispered. I am. My son died with his father, and you're just a stranger who wants money. Osvaldo's face turned white, then red. He opened and closed his mouth but couldn't say anything. Finally, he turned around and went to the door. All right, all right, he muttered. If that's the case, I'm no longer your relative. And don't expect any help from me when the going gets tough. Osvaldo reached the door, turned around one last time. You'll regret it. You will regret it bitterly. I will get justice and then… Goodbye, Osvaldo, I interrupted him. He slammed the door and left. A minute later, we heard the sound of a car. He left. Severiano and I were alone in the trashed room. Mom, are you okay? My son asked, putting his arm around my shoulders. I'm fine, son. I'm just tired. What did he say about the court? Can he contest the will? He could try, but Licenciado Castillo said he doesn't stand a chance, especially after the funeral. We cleaned the room, swept up the vase, put the chair back. There was hardly any trace of the fight, but the residue was heavy. Osvaldo was my son, no matter how badly he behaved. It hurt to see what he'd become. Maybe he'd come to his senses. But whatever it was, the decision had been made, and there was no turning back.